Hello everyone, this is Daita Sergi, Programs Coordinator with the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, AASHE, and a liaison to the Higher Education Association Sustainability Consortium, HIASC, and the Disciplinary Associations Network for Sustainability, DANCE, and I will be introducing today's webinar. It is my pleasure to welcome you all. Please note, this webinar is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties or have to leave early, you and others can view the recording later. Presentation materials will be available after the live broadcast as well. Everyone in the audience is on mute, so the only way to communicate with the presenter is by typing your questions or comments in the questions pane in the control panel on your screen. Feel free to type in questions or comments at any point during the webinar, and these will be addressed during Q&A. If you have additional questions, please email them to us and we will get back to you. At the end of the webinar, you'll have the option to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. We take your suggestions into account when planning for future webinars, so please fill out the post-webinar survey, and thank you in advance for letting us know your thoughts. At this time, I would like to introduce today's webinar presenter, Dr. Deborah Rowe. Deborah is the president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development, co-founder and director of HIASC, and founder and director of DANCE, and has been a professor of energy and energy efficiency for 37 years. She is also the recipient of the MIT C3E Education Award. Deborah, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you here today for participating in this webinar and the kickoff of the initiative on Beyond Doom and Gloom, Engaging Students in Solutions to Climate Change. I know your time is precious, so we plan to make good use of it today. Let's get started. I want to put this all in the context of education for sustainable development and a definition that came out of one of the international conferences. Education for Sustainable Development, also known as ESD, enables people to develop the knowledge and the skills to participate in decisions that will improve the quality of life now without damaging the planet for the future. Notice the emphasis on decisions. Notice the emphasis on building not just knowledge base, but skills so that you can take action. For some of you, you may live in places where the phrase sustainable development has become politicized and is difficult for you. So I just want to let you know, as well as the rest of the audience today, that the skills that we list under international and national sustainability learning outcomes that are needed for sustainable development are the same skills that employers value. So you can focus on that piece of it, and sometimes that helps you with your local politics. There's a citation there that can give you more information. So when we educate for ESD, we are educating for solutions, because individual change is not enough. It's important, but it's not enough. Projects on campus that relate to reduction of greenhouse gases and climate change solutions, they're important, but they're not enough. Research and academic publishing, of course, is important, but that also is not enough. Climate change requires regulatory and policy changes to shift our societies to less greenhouse gas emissions. Students can help. The public can help as well. Not only that, but we're hearing from those engaged in this effort to create the regulatory and policy shifts that are required, that we need the help of students and the public. When we educate for solutions, we are also looking at the student learning outcomes for ESD, because they consistently include systems thinking and actions, change skills, change management skills, change agent skills, and the ability to use applied problem solving with civic engagement to get at the societal shifts that we need. How do we do that as faculty, and those of you as well who are staff or who are working in other ways in our society? Well, including it in assignments is key. Also including it in co-curricular student life activities. Both can engage students in these policy changes to shift our societies to a more sustainable future. We have used this diagram for over a decade. It shows us what do we need to do to get to what you see in blue, sustainable communities and sustainable economies. The ecosystems on the outside, because everything we do is within the context of our ecosystems and the life-sustaining gifts that they provide to us all the time. But what we need to use is what's in the middle circle, the yellow circle. We need to take our knowledge and our skills and apply them to accomplish two things. To accomplish changes in our private behaviors, our habits, but also to accomplish changes in the public choices that our societies make in our policies. And if we do those two things, private and public choices, we will get to more sustainable economies and communities. So our focus today is on that sometimes talked about, but often not implemented enough focus on public choices. You've heard that I'm president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development. I'm really a professor of renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency for 37 years, but also teach campus and corporate sustainability. In my role, though, as president of the U.S. Partnership, we have focused on integrating sustainable development into education and learning nationally, and also we're involved internationally. As you can see, we have hundreds of partner organizations, and then we have these sector teams that are reflective of the sectors within society. The higher education sector has been very active, and it is this group that has worked to support and co-found national networks and to bring you this initiative today with those national networks. Here are the networks. DANS, as you've heard, and HEASC. These two networks are made up of over 60 national higher education associations. Some of them are international as well. Let me go into a little bit more detail on them because they have resources for you that will enhance your efforts. The Disciplinary Associations Network for Sustainability is made up of dozens, I think we're over 45 now, academic societies. These are the disciplinary societies where the faculty go. And you'll see that I listed some as their organizational name, and some as just the discipline because I couldn't fit it all on one slide, and there's more. You can go to that link. There's a resources page, which we're also updating. They'll have a new website soon. But I wanted to particularly call out the American Society for Engineering Education and the Ecological Society of America, both for their input into this initiative and for the extra efforts that they made to distribute information to their members for this initiative. Others in DANS have done it as well, but I wanted to give a thank you to them. HEASC is made up not of the faculty associations, but of the professional societies for presidents and chief academic officers, and as you see, the other groups here. Student affairs, campus activities, facilities, business purchasers, environmental health and safety, and others. Both of these networks have been around for over 10 years, working on integrating sustainability into higher education and into the communities that surround our colleges and universities. So this became a high priority for both networks to develop this initiative on Beyond Doom and Gloom, engaging students in solutions to climate change. Why was this such a high priority for both networks? Why is this initiative so necessary? Well, we did some listening, and here's what we found. We found that educators were asking for it, practitioners were asking for it, policymakers were asking for it, and we found that students also needed it. Let me dig into each of those, starting with the students. More and more courses in more and more disciplines are doing some kind of coverage of climate change. And when students learn about climate change, it's a lot of bad news. More severe weather events, sea level rise, disruption of ecosystems in the food chain, species extinction, more disease. This is a lot of bad news for the students to take in. Oftentimes, we hear from the students that they feel frustrated, worried, confused about how to make a difference about this. Many times they feel disempowered, that they don't have the power to make positive change. And oftentimes they go out and try and make some change, and then when it doesn't work, they emotionally shut down and turn into early cynics. And the last thing we need to be graduating are more cynics. Often they see opportunities to build solutions, but they're too limited. They're told that they need to change their private habits to more sustainable living, which is important but not sufficient. Or they're given opportunities to protest, which is important, but not the full set of choices that they have. Educators have asked for this initiative. Here's what we found. Educators told us that we are not experts in the possible solutions. We're more comfortable teaching about climate change now or about environmental challenges we have, but we don't know the facts we need to teach the possible solutions. We do not have energy expertise, even though we know that climate change comes in large part from combustion of fossil fuels and that we can move to renewables. We just don't have the energy expertise to teach about it. We don't fully understand the barriers as to why it isn't occurring faster, these solutions. And we would welcome materials that we can use in our courses. This was one of the most common phrases that we heard. Yes, it's a good idea to connect students to solutions for more renewable energies and energy efficiency. In fact, many of the faculty expressed that they were feeling discomfort, even some despair over climate change, and that they wanted to be connected to possible solutions. And when we developed these materials and piloted them, we got feedback that students were responding well to the materials. Practitioners also asked for this initiative. Who are the practitioners? Well, the businesses and the nonprofits and the government who are actually moving forward with ramping up our implementation of green energy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Bad energy policies at both state and federal levels are damaging our energy efficiency and renewable energy businesses and the job growth that comes with them, we heard. Policymakers, practitioners told us, hear from fossil fuel companies and utilities that are fossil fuel based a lot, but they don't hear enough from people who are supporting energy efficiency and renewable energies. And working across many states and also federally, we heard from practitioners that we really could use student engagement and energy policy, that we're too busy running the businesses and nonprofits, other organizations to do this successfully alone. This really came to light for me personally because in this last year, Michigan redid all of their energy bills. And much of the activity has been going on at the state level in terms of energy solutions to climate change. In Michigan, we had staff and lobbyists that showed up from the fossil fuel companies and the fossil fuel-based utility companies. They showed up at the hearings, they showed up at the offices, they showed up in the staffers' communications constantly with lots of efforts. Some of the information the policymakers heard was clearly misinformation. And the only side that could balance all of that out were the environmental organizations, some of the small and medium renewable energy and energy efficiency businesses. And it was very hard to counter some of the incomplete information, even some misinformation that was out there, and to get good energy policy. So the first bills that came out really would have damaged very substantially both renewable energies and energy efficiency in the state. So we reached out to students. We reached out to community colleges. We reached out to universities. We got the students engaged, and they felt, as they told us, a sense of relief that there was something they could do that was proactive. So they visited the Capitol, they made phone calls, they did emails, they did a lot of phone calls, and they found out where the policymakers were, what additional information they needed, but mostly they changed the emotional climate because the policymakers listened to the students, and it really had an impact. We've ended up with, by no means is it a perfect set of energy bills legislation that passed, but it's much better than it would have been otherwise, and much of that was due to the student involvement. And other states now, there's been a bunch of press just recently about the good energy bills that passed in Michigan and how it can be used as a precedent for other states. So that really brought it home for us as practitioners in the state that we really need this initiative. It reinforced it, but we were getting this information nationally. Policymakers also asked for it. When we would talk to those who already understood the need for good energy policy, they told us that the fossil fuel employees and lobbyists often dominate the hearings and the communications. Typical comments were that when students showed up and they're describing how we're impacting their future, our fellow policymakers are more open to supporting renewable energies and energy efficient policies. So this new initiative came from the practitioners, the educators, and the policymakers all asking for it, and the students, from what we were seeing, needing it, needing a way they could get involved in solutions. So now let's take a look at what this initiative is. The good news is it's easy to use, it helps students, it also addresses this high priority in terms of climate change solutions, the policies that are needed to transition to a clean energy future, much cleaner than we have now. Before I move forward, I want to make a note. We have over 19 countries that are represented in the attendees to this webinar. By the way, this webinar is really a record breaker in terms of how many people, over 470 people actually registered for this. And we'll either view it live or view the copy later, and of course the copy will be available to others. We didn't publicize internationally, but we do have these 19 countries here today, and I want to say welcome to you. And please use these materials. It matters when students from other countries contact our policymakers and say, you are going to affect our future as well, and we care about what you're doing. You can also take this model of an initiative that we're doing and adapt it to the policies that you are looking at being developed in your own countries. So you can use this initiative as a model as well. Okay, here's the components of the initiative. You ready? Number one, we have a page for faculty. This page can also be used for staff who are working on co-curricular activities. And so DITA is taking this link and putting it into the chat box for you, so you don't have to wait until this webinar is posted. You can go ahead and access that faculty page right away. We also have a web page for students. And once again, this link is being put in the chat box, so you can copy it and use it right away. We have, and it is linked to both of these faculty and student pages, we have a short video that you'll be seeing later on, PowerPoint slides, just a couple of key ones that you can use in your classroom or assign to your students. We have accompanying short assignments so that you can integrate that into your courses, and some key facts on renewable energies for you, as well as some information, research-based, on civic engagement and how it improves learning. So this is what the faculty page, faculty and staff page looks like. I know you can't see that really well in terms of details. You've got the link, and we'll dig into this some more in just a little bit. This is what the student page looks like. AASHE is the host for these web pages because AASHE is a facilitating organization, a real leader in higher ed and sustainability, but also a facilitating organization for both DANS and He Asks. So they are hosting these pages. The student web page is easy to get to because we've created a URL that takes you to the student web page for you to give to students. It's just climatefixes.org. In the future, we may focus on other solutions for climate change, but we really looked at the set of solutions that can have the greatest impact and this need to move off of fossil fuel combustion to renewable energies and energy efficiency was such a high priority, we're doing this one first. On the page for students are links to civic engagement opportunities for solar energy, wind power, how natural gas is not the solution for climate change, and in fact, it's not even that great of a bridge fuel and is not necessary for a bridge fuel. And this very important, taking what is now an externality of greenhouse gas emissions and putting it into our economic structure as a price on carbon. And there is surprising growth in support for a price on carbon from a bipartisan position. MacArthur Foundation has given some funding to an organization that's doing great work on this, and we connect students to it via this page. There's also a number of corporations like General Motors and communities like a number of cities and others who have made commitments to 100% renewable energies because they see it as possible, cost-effective, and smart. And so that there's a link to that as well. There's also links on who to contact on the student webpage, best practices for communicating with policymakers as well. We also have these PowerPoint slides that you can either use in your classroom or you can assign it to students. They are available at this bit.ly, and the bit.ly link is available on the faculty webpage. So these energy civic engagement links include the actual links. So let me go into a little bit more detail. The solar energy link takes students to Vote Solar, which has worked with the Solar Energy Industry Association, the American Solar Energy Society, and other very well-respected groups where they can sign up for policy alerts, both at the state and the federal level. Wind Energy Link takes you to the American Wind Energy Association, where they've had a very extensive set of materials that are constantly updated on policy alerts around wind. The Beyond Natural Gas, as I've mentioned, is really a good website that talks about why natural gas is not a good bridge fuel, does not have to be the bridge fuel, and that it has its own problems with greenhouse gas emissions that have to be addressed. The National Policy for Clean Energy takes you to this bipartisan effort to put a price on carbon, which is a great way to just give true costs for the different energy sources we use, and that would itself increase rapid implementation of energy efficiency and renewables. And then the Solutions Project is this project I mentioned on moving to 100% renewables. You can sign up at all of these and they'll keep you informed and give you policy alerts. The second slide you can use that also matches what's on the student webpage is helping students see how to contact their policymakers, where they can get emails and phone numbers. It also gives them an example of what they might say, because many of them say, oh, I'm not an energy expert, or I can't talk about climate change to my policymakers because they're science deniers and climate change deniers. So here's a script actually developed at Carleton College and used in their student center as part of an initiative called I Care, which stands for I Care About Renewable Energies, where students were given the opportunity to call, have a positive experience of civic engagement and talking to their policymakers. Too many students today just say, oh, you can't make any difference. And so they shut down before they even try. So this slide, the slide before, it gives them the tools and the opportunities to not go to that early cynic place, which is so damaging for democracy as well as our environment. As you can see, it also includes tips on how to contact your legislators and communication tips. Now, are some of you going, oh my goodness, talking about policy in class, civic engagement, I don't do this, it makes me uncomfortable. Well, I want to give you some research-based information here, that it improves learning. We received a grant, DANS did, along with AACNU and another National Higher Ed Association, a FIPSE grant, which is the Fund for the Improvement of Post-Secondary Education. It was from the U.S. Department of Education, and it was called Sustainability Improves Student Learning. It was with 13 STEM National Association, all of them DAN's members. And the website that you see there has all sorts of great information on it, including a beginning handbook for faculty on teaching sustainability. But if you click on the Empowering Students page, you will find information like this. Students who participate in civic engagement learn more. They learn more academic content. That right there is a great reason to include civic engagement opportunities. Also, civically engaged students learn higher order skills, including critical thinking, writing, communication, mathematics, and technology, at more advanced levels of aptitude. So why do you include civic engagement? Not just because our society needs it and it's a solution to climate change, but because it also helps improve learning. It also increases students' emotional intelligence. This is an item that employers are asking for, and also motivates people towards conscientious community action, which is part of the mission of higher education, that we graduate people who help make the world a better place. Included with the components for faculty is this video. It's only 2 minutes long. We did it because we knew that some students don't read as much as they should, and we wanted all of them to experience something that would motivate them to be part of creating solutions, quickly educate them, and link them to opportunities. Some of the phrases in the video were actually designed for inclusion of those who are still skeptical about even a need to address climate change. This video is available at this link. Daita's putting that in the chat box right now. It's very professional. It's done by somebody who does sustainability videos for corporations and organizations around the world, and has for years. And you can use this link, of course, after the webinar. We'll also be showing it later on in the webinar today. And I only have a few more minutes, and then we're going to move to questions and answers. The other component for faculty on the faculty page are short assignments. They can be used in a wide variety of disciplines, whether you're teaching in the social sciences, the humanities, or other disciplines. We can discuss this during question and answer if you want. So the assignments doc that you link to from the faculty page provides, of course, the link to the slides in the video. It also provides an engagement and reflection assignment. I did some dissertation work on self-concept and decision-making, and we know that if students build a self-concept, that they can contribute to solutions to our urgent sustainability challenges, that it helps move them to action. So this engagement and reflection assignment is there for them to sign up to get more information from these organizations, and then describe what they hope to accomplish by getting involved. There's also multiple choice questions for you that you can use if you want to insert those in a quiz or test or some other activity. Also on the faculty page are key facts on renewable energies. And know that this whole initiative and the key facts as part of this initiative were an extension of the national call for energy literacy that we developed with a DANS fellow who was on staff at the MIT Energy Lab. This is actually a piece of the video that you're going to see in a minute, but it's also one of the key facts. 31 top scientific societies say that we have to act on climate change. It's urgent, and that human activities are the primary driver. So it confirms this piece about how we have to stop putting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere as quickly as possible. Here's some good news in our clean energy facts. This is from the National Renewable Energy Lab and their Energy Futures Analysis. Right now we have the technology today to supply 80% of the electricity needs of the United States with renewables and energy efficiency. We can ramp up to this 80% from today's 15%. We already have the technologies that pay for themselves and provide lower costs. They pay for themselves within their lifetime, so they're cost effective. In order for this to happen, though, we can't have energy policies that obstruct the growth of energy efficiency and renewables. And right now, there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of pushback from fossil fuel industries at the state level, and they're watching the federal level. Many policymakers aren't literate themselves. They don't even understand the connections between climate change and energy policy. And too many are supporting damaging policies that favor fossil fuels and damage the growth of renewable energies. Any of you who've dug into the differences in subsidies and the permitting and the laws and that affect both. We have a country that's made up basically of oligopolies that are government regulated, and they are traditionally very fossil fuel oriented, and they're holding on to that kind of outdated frame. So students can show up and express their desire for policies that support a rapid shift to a clean energy future. Students are making a difference when they get involved. And we've been in touch with national student organizations that have been giving us this feedback on a state-by-state basis. Once again, there's your link to the student webpage. And there are benefits to you of using these materials. So let's review the benefits. They're easy to use. They connect to solutions instead of worry, despair, and cynicism. They teach both knowledge and skills for our sustainability learning outcomes, for critical thinking, and for the skills for democracy. And we commit to using quality energy experts to keep these materials updated. You'll see that with what we have now and also what we're going to continue to add with even more materials in the future. So you don't have to worry about you becoming an expert in an area. Just connect students to it, and they can continue to learn. Look, changing what you do in the classroom or on campus takes effort, and change is uncomfortable. You know, Professor Zients has got, and others have a whole stream of research literature on how change is uncomfortable, even positive change. So I'm asking you to get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable so that you can make some small changes, but those changes will have impacts that are powerful and positive. They'll reduce despair and worry, move us to solutions, and provide skills for lifelong efforts. I keep saying solutions. I do have to say that it's not like we're going to be able to eliminate climate change, but it is on a continuum of human suffering and ecosystem destruction, and this is a key solution that we can work on. So there is going to be a public launch of the video. And that public launch is going to be in a few weeks. The video is available to you right now, but you will be receiving an email. We want this video to go viral, so it'll be picked up not only in higher ed, but also by the public. We'll send you an email that sounds something like this that you can share with others. Please check out this new video that connects students to a solution for climate change, better green energy policies. So thank you in advance, if you can, for distributing that announcement when you get it, and perhaps for linking on the video a few times on the day of its public launch, because of course it's the views that cause it to trend and go viral. Next steps for you are pretty simple. Number one, assign the video on the student page. Number two, use the assignments on the faculty page. Number three, share this initiative with others. And number four, announce the video public launch when you get the email. So we have the power to choose a more sustainable future. I want to hear your questions, and I want your feedback on what else we should be putting on the student page, on the faculty page, on how it worked when you used it in your classroom, of course. That's the best email to use for me. Daita's putting it into the chat box. Before we go to question and answer, I want to show you the video, but I also want to let people know who have signed into the webinar by your phone that this video, which is a 2-minute video, you won't be able to see. you can use the link in the chat box and go to it right now and watch it on your own and come back to the webinar if you want, or you can just wait for a couple of minutes. Everybody who's signed in by the computer, you should be able to see it. This is a glitch with the Citrix platform that we're using, and they just haven't been able to fix it yet. They're working on it for their future webinars. But I do want to give the opportunity for those of you who have signed in by computer, which is most of you, to see the video. All of you can now open up the questions pane and start inputting your questions. And after the video, we will come back and we will address your questions. So here we go. And here comes the video. So there we go. That's the video, which you can choose to use. You can also just use the slides and the assignments and the key energy facts and why civic engagement is useful to use in higher education. So now we're going to open it up to questions. I'm really excited to see what you guys have to share. And I know, Daita, you were going to look at some of these questions and share them.
Yes, thank you so much, Deborah. And before we start with the Q&A, I'd like to remind everyone that you can send your questions via the questions pane on the GoToWebinar control panel. And we already have a few, so I will start going through them. So there's a few regarding the Michigan story. Can you point us to specific coverage of the student positive impact on Michigan legislation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? You glitched out for just a minute.
I'm sorry. Here is the question again. Can you point us to specific coverage of the student positive impact on the Michigan legislation?
Yeah, I'll have to get that link and send it to you. I'm part of a coalition called Michigan Energy, Michigan Jobs. And so I've seen it, but I don't know the link by heart. What it does talk about are the bills that were passed. The coverage did not necessarily speak to how students were involved because it was a coalition of a bunch of different organizations and students were a part of it. I can tell you a little bit, though, very quickly about what happened. We started out with no renewable portfolio standard with a grid charge that was going to make solar energy, the financial analysis no longer as attractive. That was going to cause a barrier to entry for people. That was also going to take away the net metering that was available and damage those who'd already invested in the renewables. And all of that got turned around by the students. We also created more energy efficiency optimization programs, which was a fantastic win as well.
Thank you. Did Michigan and others get accused of having paid protesters and or feeding info to students in their interactions with the legislature?
Didn't hear the second part. I missed a word. But in terms of fake protesters, no, we did not get any pushback on that. But that was because the students didn't just show up with signs. They didn't do that. They actually called the legislators and said, we're interested in having more renewable energies and energy efficiency in our state for the following reasons, the same thing that the video says, jobs and health and economy. And we would like to know where you stand and what information you need so that you can be supportive of this. So it's that's not fake. They would say we go to school at the University of Michigan or at this community college or this other university. So no, we did not get any pushback on that. And then the second half of the question, I didn't.
Were they accused of being paid protesters or feeding info to students in their interaction with the legislature?
Oh no, there weren't. We didn't get any kind of pushback that there were paid protesters. And I think the way that you address that is to just invite reporters to where the student groups are meeting. And of course, it's always a question of which source is going to report what. And we continue to work on getting good information out and information literacy to our public. That could be a whole other topic. In terms of feeding information to students, what we found is students started asking questions, and we just sent them to high-quality sites that were evidence-based and science-based. So just like we have with the call to energy literacy that we posted on the faculty page and some of the other key resources that we have listed there.
Thank you, Deb. Next question. Wanting to do something about climate change is a normative decision. How can these forms of civic engagement be required in a course? Aren't we requiring our students to do work that might be out of step with the values of some students? How can this engagement happen without prescribing particular norms?
Oh, I love that question. So when I have taught at University of Vermont, right, I'm kind of teaching many times to the converted, those who already understand the science of climate change and that it's happening and they want to do something about it. But when I have taught at Oakland Community College outside of Detroit, most of my students are heating and cooling guys. They are required to take an energy management class in order to get a heating and cooling certificate. They walk in as climate change skeptics and deniers. And so the first thing that we've done is educate them. There's nothing wrong with assigning what are the science-based facts. And I've gotten very good at explaining the science of climate change that really comes out of 6th grade science around, you know, the simple chemical equation of what happens when you actually burn fossil fuels and how carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere, and compare it to how a car gets hot like a solar greenhouse and how the earth gets hot like a solar greenhouse. I'm glad to share that approach with anybody who wants it, and how it doesn't get hot everywhere, it changes climate. So 37 years of teaching that, by the time they get the facts, they're concerned. And once they get concerned, then they look for information. The key with civic engagement is don't prescribe to them what they're going to say. Just give them information on the science of climate change, on the key facts about what renewable energies can do, and then the civic engagement becomes an assignment, which is just expressing your democratic freedom of speech. And freedom of speech is something that's accepted across the political spectrum. There's something else I want to point out to you if you're sensitive about this, which is on the call for energy literacy, which is on the faculty page, when you open it up, the last item under the resources, on the resources sheet, we created something called Course and Campus Energy Conversations. This is a set of questions. The original structure for this came from a group called Living Room Conversations. You'll see it's posted on their website. It was started by a progressive and somebody from the Tea Party. And it's about asking questions, creating civil discourse to find common ground across the political spectrum. I think you may find the set of questions there to be very useful. We have to update the last little piece of it because it's about the Clean Power Plan, and of course we're undergoing changes around that. But the set of questions are very up to date. And so I think you'll find a lot of useful material there that ends up moving your classwork forward and the growth of your students.
Thank you. So we got a few questions about the links and slides. So the webinar is being recorded, and together with the slides and the links will be made available to everyone who registered, and you will receive an email likely tomorrow to let you know where you can access all these materials. So now going back to the questions, we received a good bunch of questions regarding assignments for K-12, and I will just ask you if you can talk about how can we build building blocks of education before we start talking to young students about renewable energy and calling their representatives. what is the scaffolding you believe we need to provide to elementary students, middle schoolers, high schoolers?
So we have a K-12 sector team of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you where those resources are. So if you go to, let me get to a link down here on the bottom. If you go to uspartnership.org, and then on the left-hand side, you go to sector teams, you'll see K-12 and teacher education sector. So it's just uspartnership.org, then click on K-12 and teacher education on the left. You will see there information about the Sustainable Development Goals. We developed Education for Sustainable Development Standards. There's resources, organizations, case studies, learning activities, assessment tools, etc. So that's not going to give you everything you need. I know the U.S. Green Building Council has also worked on a K-12 plan for ESD. They're still working on what the common standards are across that, but the first report is out. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll get it to you, because one of our board members and one of the people who chair our K-12 sector team were very involved in that. It's interesting you say this, and I know Daita said keep the answer short, so I will do that. But just before this webinar started, Daita and I talked about how the only other webinar that's had hundreds and hundreds of people on it, like sign up like this one had, were the recycling ones. And some of you may remember, you may be old enough to remember that we really pushed recycling in elementary schools. What is it now, a couple decades ago, maybe it's 4 decades ago, I don't remember exactly. But there are people who are so passionate about recycling. So what I would say is we need to look at what are the key actions we need to take to help reduce the negative impacts of climate change and our other sustainability challenges. If you haven't looked at the Sustainable Development Goals yet, I encourage you to do so. There's a lot of useful information there. And focus on this in early education. Let students build solar collectors. Let them see that this stuff works. Let them experience being energy ambassadors. We did this with the Detroit Urban League, about 9,000 young people in Detroit one summer. And when they own the information and can share it with family and friends and community, then you really start to see that empowerment and development of the self-concept. So what I would say is not only is prioritize, look at all the resources I just gave you, but also look at the self-concept and the voice that you're building for these young people, and also the change agent skills so that they can be successful, and if not successful in the first few tries, whoever is, right? Resilient at least on building systemic change.
Thank you, Deborah. Also related to the Michigan story, part of people's ability to find hope is to have access to case studies that describe success stories and ways that people have made good progress. Is the Michigan story already written up as a case study and that describes the problem, the approach, and solutions, or are you planning to write up such a case study?
Oh, I think that's a great idea. So whoever put in that question, go ahead and contact me. And you want to write it up with me, or does somebody else want to write it up with me? Look, I'm a third generation doer, okay? I'm a practitioner. And I know it's important to include the scholar side as well, and I'm going to be doing more of that in the near future. Even I already have an encyclopedia that's out. I already have a bunch of journal articles. I know I need to do more. But I like doing it with others. So if somebody wants to partner with me on that project, great. Let me know. Glad to do it.
And we're talking about more projects. Have you created or are you thinking about creating an online community that would help individual educators and their students using these materials to connect directly with one another?
So I think that's a wonderful idea. Once again, I just need, and if somebody wants, if they can give 3 hours approximately per week to this, we can bring you in as a DANS or a HEASC National Fellow or as a U.S. Partnership Fellow. These are not paid positions, I'm telling you up front. But then you get to work on that kind of national impact, and I really think we need an international version of this initiative as well. We're already working with the United Nations University Regional Centers of Expertise on that level. So once again, that's a great idea. I also think it's something that we could look at some of the companies to fund. Funding is going to be changing now, right? We may see some funding changes from the traditional sources. And so aligning what we need to get done with that sweet spot of theory development and research that also creates real-world impacts and educates our students to be systemic thinkers who can be effective change agents in the world with funding sources to get all this done. That's the sweet spot. And I'm glad to work with anybody on that.
Yep, and I also want to, make a plugin for AASHE and our Campus Sustainability Hub and the course materials section of the hub, where everyone can upload materials or see what is already in there. So that's at hub.aashe.org. And the next question is, what is your opinion of large-scale climate protests, like the People's Climate March in New York and the one happening in DC in April? Do you think this is effective?
So I've been a student for a very long time of social movements and how change occurs. And I do think that they are an important component. I do think that we've had some gaps in what we've educated our students to be able to do. Some of them can get involved not only in, well, let me back up and say this. In the preface to the encyclopedia that I wrote, by the way, I don't make money if you buy it, but it's called Achieving Sustainability, and once you buy it for an institution, which is expensive. But the online version, it's free, downloadable articles forever once you've done that. I'm only saying that, and I can send you the preface, but in my preface, what I say is there's 3 ways to make systemic change. You join within, and students sometimes I think are too afraid to work for companies that they perceive as being evil, much too much black and white thinking here. And you work from within to shift the culture and shift the policies. I have a colleague who's doing that right now by closing the loop on the economy of the waste from cows and extracting fertilizer from there and getting bioenergy from there instead of using fossil fuel based. So you can work from within. The second thing you can do is protest from without, and students of course need those skills. But the third thing that you can do is also create alternatives that they can point to. Here's another way of doing things. None of that gets institutionalized without policy. So yeah, well, I think protesting is a piece of it. I think we need to be teaching the other pieces as well.
All right, so are there any efforts underway to protect the informational educational resources you provide that are available on government websites? Do you have any concerns that these resources are at risk of deletion or biased modification?
Yeah, maybe somebody else is going to remember this. I'm blanking on it, but there's a couple of sites that have been put up where we had some major hackathons. That's what they called it, but it was people at universities, and I want to give you deep thank yous because I know it disrupted your work schedule and you did it anyway, where they went and downloaded a whole bunch of stuff that was on EPA's website, NOAA's website, etc., because of the fear that things could be deleted and some of the initial deletions we've already seen. And they have created other sites and other repositories, and people have also donated money to that. There was something called the Something Whole, which is a site where you can go see it. There's another piece which I heard, which is if enough people ask for something, that it also needs to be put back up on an archive site. So yeah, that's one of the areas where I think activity needs to continue. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Going back to the materials you shared, in your experience, have the course and campus energy conversations triggered fruitful discussions about campus sustainability performance itself?
That wasn't its focus. Its focus was to get people who typically can't talk to each other because they come from different parts of the political spectrum and they're polarizing against each other, to instead sit down and find that common ground of, yes, I do care about clean air, clean water, and a future without destruction of ecosystems. Yes, I do think renewable energies and efficiency have all sorts of benefits to it. Yes, and then we directed them towards helping their states develop their clean power plan. We did not direct them towards campus activities. And once again, while I think campus activities and projects are really important, HEASC, the Higher Education Association Sustainability Consortium, has its initial strategic direction to use the campus and the community as a living lab for sustainability. So I think remembering the community part of that, at the American Association of Community Colleges Seed Center, for example, there is a toolkit on how higher education can be a catalyst for all the stakeholders in the region to address climate change. So once again, it wasn't its focused purpose, but yes, we have gotten very good feedback from those who have used it. I also just want to say just a overarching statement here. If I'm not answering your questions well because you think I didn't hear it clearly, for goodness sakes, just send me an email. You know, here's my email, and we'll be glad to respond to you. We want to assist you so that you can move forward on this crucial work.
Right, we have 1 minute left and 2 questions. So let's get to this one first. These materials are excellent, but how do you talk about these facts in a society that now considers alternative facts as common language?
Yeah, so I think that's the broader question about informational literacy and how do you decide what's quality information. I think all of us should be having those discussions in our classrooms and also within other settings. So it's a bigger conversation. I can't do that one in 30 seconds, but I sure wouldn't give up. Keep moving forward on that. And what's the other question? And while you're thinking about asking it, I have to thank Daita. She's been unbelievable in being the colleague that helped to make this happen. So applause to her, please.
Thank you, Deb. And here's the last question. As a nonprofit and in education, we are limited by rules to get involved in politics and do advocacy. How can we encourage this work within nonprofit rules and higher education policies?
So there's a difference between advocating for a policy and informing policymakers. You need to look that up with your legal counsel, but informing policymakers and also learning from policymakers about what their understanding is can lead you to pathways that can be fruitful without bumping up against that problem. Good question.
Thank you so much. And we received the link to the data hackathon, so I am sending that now. Thank you to James Vasenka who sent that to us, and also someone else who suggested also that libraries provide a lot of resources for information literacy skills. At this time, I would like to thank Deborah again and everyone for attending. If you have additional questions, feel free to contact Deborah or contact me at webinars@aashe.org and we will get back to you. The recording and presentation materials will be available in the AASHE Campus Sustainability Hub, and we will email everyone once they are uploaded, as well as the links that were included in the presentation today. And Before we conclude, I want to thank Deborah, HIASC, Dance, and the associations who helped organize this webinar, and to everyone who attended. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Bye.